What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ, Bucky, Rhett, following a Week 2 slate of games. I am still in Charlotte, North Carolina. Looks like you two fine gentlemen are at home. Fun weekend of football, boys. Buck, you got a grin on your face. What are you grinning about over there?
Are you enjoying your time in North Carolina because you stayed behind? I just wondered, like, if you're just hanging out, you make a trip up to Appy,
there it
hang
is.
with the Mountaineers,
Yeah,
and kind of
Thursday
do your
night
thing. And we got a little Thursday
This
night
is the
action.
best. This is the best. Yeah, we've got South Alabama coming off of an 87-point performance coming up the hill. We've got our work cut out for us on that one. It's a little App State South Al Thursday nighter. Money's going to come up there as well to take in the ball game. My wife and son are flying out, so we're gonna make a whole big deal of it. Money then went on the air during the Charger game and said DJ's being honored at the App State game, which is not happening.
Are you?
We are literally just going to watch a football game. It's gonna be very disappointed.
We're going in the Ring of Honor.
There's
we're going in the Ring of Honor.
I just needed tickets. They got me tickets. That's all. So I've got a busy week out here in Carolina, which is going to get me to our first takeaway from the week, because we'll get to the games. We're going to go through the games, but the biggest takeaway right now is just what happened. Bryce Young is no longer the starter. So from number 1 overall pick to a year later, new coaching staff, new regime, and now it is Andy Dalton under center. I'll get to everything that I saw yesterday, and then in my preparation for this game, what I saw. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, unfiltered here, before I give you what I saw. Buck, you can lead us off, and Rhett follow them up.
Wow, like major surprise in terms of new coach, new tenure, new coach brought in to really resurrect Bryce Young. 2 games in, we're pulling the plug. Just really surprised at all of it. Last year, we didn't want to put blame on Bryce Young because we felt like the supporting cast wasn't good enough. This year, we have a new coach, first-time head coach, trying to bring in a new system. Yes, he has some veterans around him, but I don't know if 2 games is enough of a sample size to really know what a young player can be. And the final point would be, man, I feel like we're doing such a disservice to the young quarterbacks around the league. Like, I don't think we train them properly. I don't think we give them enough time. I think the expectations are outsized based on, I guess, draft grades and those things. To me, look, I understand he hadn't played well, but 2 games into a new season, to me, it just seems like it's not enough time to fully understand who Bryce Young is and what he will be at the next level.
And I think you make some really good points there about the development piece, certainly, Buck. But I think, this is a decision to me that you got to also go back, a few years. I mean, like, this is a team that has had mounting pressure to win after some very disappointing and look, let's be frank, embarrassing performances year over year, right? Even going back to, the tail end of the Matt Rule era, and then, into Frank Reich, and we're having coaching changes mid-season. We've got, overhauls on staffs mid-season. And it comes down to this for me with Dave Canales, coming in as a rookie head coach, but, certainly more of a proven track record running an offense, right? We saw the reclamation project, or the rejuvenation, perhaps is a better word, that he had with Baker Mayfield, and that worked, right, in Tampa. And so, now you're like, okay, well, where are we trusting that things are going wrong here? Are we trusting that it's, the second year quarterback into his second game? Or are we trusting that, it's things are going wrong on his end? Or, the coach in Canales, who comes off a very successful run as an offensive coordinator, it's like you put 2 and 2 together here. And if a change has to be made to start winning games, I think you go, you side with the part of the equation that has the proven track record at this point, at least on the offensive side. And that, to me, is Canales. So then you make the change at quarterback. I think it's a lot of things working here, and certainly getting embarrassed 2 weeks in a row to open this season plays a role here, Deej.
Yeah, I'll start there, because I said this to somebody after the game was over yesterday, which was, when you have an offensive head coach and you can have a plan for a player in place, but when your reputation is built on the offensive side of the ball, and you are as inept as this team has looked through 2 weeks, including a game I was at yesterday where they could not complete a bubble screen, they couldn't complete a hitch, they didn't even try to push the ball down the field. The video you see right now is one of the rare instances where they did, and that ball gets picked off. It's one of those things where, as a head coach with an offensive background, you got to be sitting there thinking, man, like the rest of the league's going to just be laughing at me. You're seeing a bubble screen right here it's a high school throw that they can't make.
Yeah.
It was so bad. As I said, I don't think I was anticipating a change would be coming, because and I'll get to the personnel here momentarily, but it was to be there and see it in person. Because Buck, I think where you're coming at it from, it's like, you can't do this. This doesn't make sense. This is number one overall pick. This is so early in his development. But to be in a stadium that's dead as a doornail and to see how embarrassingly bad this offense was, it's embarrassing. That's why I did not see, and this could be an overreaction and viewed as such, but that's what it is stemming from. And the other thing, and I'll get your thoughts on this. I tweeted this out. It's unscientific, but when you go to a stadium, as we do each and every week, I look out into the stands and I look to see the jerseys that they have there. So if you think about receivers, right, which you can start multiples, tight end, running back, you know how many of their current players at those positions, when I looked around the stands, did I see any Chuba Hubbard jerseys? Did I see any Xavier Legette jerseys? No. You know what I saw? I saw a Muggsy Bogues jersey. That was what I saw. There was more Muggsy Bogues jerseys in the stands in Carolina than there were for their current skill guys. Their offensive line is not good. There's a long list of things that got us to this point, but I do think that it is, in some ways, not surprising that this move is taking place this early. That's how bad it looked yesterday.
Yeah, man, it sounds like an organizational failure from top to bottom. And let's be honest, it's been a bit of a mess since David Tepper kind of popped in, and all the moves, the succession of moves that were made, right? So you think about, you fire Ron Rivera, you bring in, Matt Rule, it doesn't necessarily work. You remove on from Cam Newton, you bring in, just a revolving door of quarterbacks. You get the number one overall pick. You make the selection with Bryce Young. And I'll say this, honestly, DJ, it probably didn't help that on Sunday night, the Houston Texans played with the second overall pick in C.J. Stroud, and they looked nothing like the ineptitude that you're seeing in Carolina. All of that stuff factors into it. And I just wonder, with the franchise and with the number one overall pick, Bryce Young, where do you go from here? Because when you pull the plug to put Andy Dalton in, man, that is saying something in a major way about how you feel about the number one overall pick in Bryce Young.
And I wonder, and I'll look, here's the thing. Dan Morgan was on the Panthers, in that Panthers front office when they made that trade, but he wasn't, the one with the final say there. Right. But I do wonder if this had been his show, right. And if it had been Dave Canales' show and they had all, gone in on Bryce Young that way together, would there be a longer leash here? But the fact that was, I guess, if you call it, from a prior era, at least halfway speaking through the head coach, you maybe feel like you have a little bit more of a rope to make this move right now and move to Andy Dalton. But yeah, it was clear, DJ, they had to do something. You can't go on like this. You're going to lose the rest of the team.
Yeah, and it's not a Bryce Young singular issue, but he's not. Right. You can say I can say that Bryce Young is not the problem with this team, but I can also say at this point in time, I don't know that he has the skills to be the solution to where they are right now. They don't. At least with Andy Dalton, you say at least we have some experience and some knowledge to maybe provide to this group. But when you don't have hardly any weapons, and you go out and you trade up at one spot that they did to go get Xavier Legette as the guy that you've identified. We have no playmakers on this team. We don't have difference makers. That's our guy. You know how many targets he had yesterday? Zero. And it's not like I watched the game. I prepped for that game. There was not Andre Johnson and Randy Moss on the field with him to be taking targets away from him. That didn't make any sense to me. So again, they're 6 players away from maybe being 10 players away from being good. And the only thing I would caution, with the comparison with him and CJ has been awesome. CJ has been fantastic. But the one thing I would caution is look at those rosters. How many players for the Carolina Panthers would start for the Houston Texans? And when you come to that conclusion, I think everybody will back off of Bryce Young just a little bit. But it's bad. It is bad right now in Carolina. Let's get to the next game here. Let's get to the one we're referencing with Houston and Chicago. Rhett, when you look at that ball game, offensively, both teams. It'll only be talked about as the Bears having struggled. both teams did struggle a little bit, and I think it's credit to two outstanding defenses.
No question, but it's the one in Houston that's getting the headlines here today because of the pressure they put on Caleb Williams. 6 sacks in the game, 23 hurries, 32 pressures, pressured on 38% of his dropbacks. And big reasons for those pressures, of course, were Danielle Hunter, this year's marquee free agency acquisition by Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans, and of course, Will Anderson, the number 3 overall pick last year. Each had 7 pressures in this game, and they were running a lot of stunts. They were moving guys around, and this Bears offensive line from top to bottom, left to right, was completely overwhelmed. I think there's a lot of talk about the interior guys not being great. Well, both tackles got whooped a number of times. I mean, you had Darnell Wright out there on that last sack there from Will Anderson. You know, it looked like he was playing first base and he was stretching to pick up a throw from the third baseman to beat the runner. It was so overextended, right? I mean, I think Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter on that one, it didn't even touch Darnell Wright. It was like a receiver running a corner route at the top of his break and just kind of gave him a little stick and got around. Braxton Jones there on the left side certainly took his fair share of it as well. Everybody has, some blame to wear in that one. I think it's amazing that Caleb Williams finished this game, right? So they've got to figure some stuff out there. I think that, some of this, you got to look at, they've got to do some stuff scheme wise too, to figure out a way to neutralize some of this pass rush. Just not just on, one-on-ones, offensive linemen getting beat. They got to figure out some ways to get the ball out of Caleb's hands and to get him out of there if they can't hold up in the pocket.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of pressure. I mean, he was under constant arrest. And I think what Caleb Williams discovered is how much different the game is at the pro level compared to the collegiate level. The things that he was able to get away with at USC when he would leave the pocket, he can't do those things because the windows are smaller, the players are much faster, and the hits are far more violent. Now, he escaped harm in terms of not being like stroked to the point where he was staying down, but man, he took some shots. And what you would like him to do is to be able to win with his arm and be less reliant on his legs. But hey, when you're the Houston Texans and the Texans are putting pressure on him like he was seeing, look, man, you got to do what you can do. But you just saw the impact of pressure on a young quarterback and how it completely broke down not only his game, but it broke down the Chicago Bears game plan.
Look, in DJ on that front with there's nowhere for him to escape to. It's like everybody's getting beat, and some of these guys are just getting pushed back into his lap. And so, even though that may not be a defender that's about to sack him there, I mean, like the offensive lineman is in his chest, and so there's nowhere to maneuver. It's like he can't step up and make a throw to beat the edge. It's just there's no escape plan. There's no easy solution. There were no easy solutions for him in this game.
Yeah, and also a game of adjustments, and I give D'Amico Ryans a lot of credit. The Bears came out, when you start this tape and you watch it, Caleb got into a little rhythm early. It was a 4-man rush. They were able to get free releases off the line of scrimmage. He was on time. He actually started out the game well. And then what happened is they had an instance where they collapsed the center. And once they saw the kind of the instability of the interior of this offensive line, they attacked it. They attacked it with pressures, sim pressures. Then they ended up just even when they went simple games, like simple twists, they couldn't pick it up. So now it sped Caleb up. And then Caleb, again, Buck talked about trying to create and extend plays like he did at SC. This is not, you're not dodging one car here. This is a highway, this is the Autobahn. Exactly. Cars coming all over the place.
He's playing
Frogger. Yeah, it's exactly what it was. He's playing Frogger out there. So I'm going through this and I'm like, okay, oh boy, the center got collapsed. And I just start checking it. And so that became a problem. Now, he got hung up on number 1 a few times. That's a teaching moment. And I've seen Caleb in this game and throughout his career, he can get through progressions. That's not it's not something he's incapable of doing. But there were some instances he hung on too long, number 1. Teaching point, okay, you learn from that tape. Their screen game, the timing in their screen game is not good. There's teams, and Buck, you've seen it, having been around the Packers. I saw it with Andy Reid. There's certain coaches and schemes that understand screens, understand timing. They teach it well, they execute it well. And there's other teams that doesn't look right. They're not a good screen team right now. Their timing's jacked up on that stuff. So they've got to be better with that. He doesn't get credit on the stat sheet, for some of these things, but there's a 3rd and 14 They're about the 30-yard line. He rips a seam. It's perfectly thrown. You get interference. They get the ball right there inside the 10-yard line. It's a 30-yard throw or whatever with a high degree of difficulty. It doesn't show up on the box score because you got to pass interference. Following that, he hits Rome Odunze with a little pop that Rome's unfortunately not able to bring that one in. There's other drops throughout the game. I mean, there was a lot of other issues, but the thing that I was encouraged was Rhett mentioned he got up. He got the stuffing kicked out of him. And he just kept getting up and getting up and getting up and getting up. And I didn't see him, Buck, show up his offensive lineman. I didn't see him just like, oh, like here we go again. They just rushed 4. I just got smoked. He got back up. The one thing that did bother me for their team, and I know DJ Morris, I've heard nothing but he's a great dude everywhere he's been. Teammates love him. I thought he got frustrated in that game. The ball wasn't finding him. They weren't on the same page with back shoulder throws. There were some near misses, but his quarterback is getting the snot kicked out of him. And then after an errant throw, DJ Moore kind of flips his helmet off on the sideline. And in my opinion, he showed up as quarterback making his second start. You can't do that. That's something that needs to be communicated to him, and just a little recognition, Buck, of hey, maybe as receivers, maybe we go back and watch the heat that this dude was under before you start getting frustrated with the ball being a little left or right.
Yeah, no, DJ, I think that's one of the things that when you start a young quarterback is one of those things that should be communicated to not only all the veterans but the coaches, how we handle, how we react, your body language, those things, because you are playing a young quarterback who's in his second start. He's trying to figure it out. The speed of the game is so much faster than what he's used to, and we have these outsized expectations on what he should be able to do right away. DJ Moore should know better. They compensated him well. They just did his contract. He had to know going in it's going to be some ups and downs when you play the young quarterback. What I loved is I saw Keenan Allen working with the young quarterback, talking to him on the side and those things. But you want everyone to be on board. And in the heat of the moment, yes, those frustrations can sometimes boil over. But you would like to see him have a little more composure, a little more poise, where he doesn't show up the quarterback on national TV, so it becomes maybe a bigger issue than it really needs to be.
Yeah, and all that being said, their defense was so outstanding. They had the ball in their hands with a chance to drive at the end of the game to go win the ball game. So if you're a Bears fan, I would take tremendous encouragement from that. The defense is stellar. Your quarterback is really tough. There's some offensive line issues that aren't going to get solved, personnel wise until we get to the offseason, but they can clean up some of their at least communication issues that they've had. So not all lost. Houston, that defense, that front is legit, and they've got guys that can win on the edges and they can push the pocket. Oh, big time, big time, big time. That's one of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, it is. There's no shame in that for the Chicago Bears. Let's get to the next game here. Dallas, New Orleans. Rhett, you look at the Cowboys, you look at the Saints. I mean, I could make an argument that the Cowboys defense is the biggest takeaway. I could make an argument what the Saints are doing on offense through 2 games is the biggest takeaway. There's a lot of different ways you can go here.
Yeah, and I actually kind of looked at the sequencing of this thing a little bit too, because I think on the surface, most people kind of look at this, like, oh, this is a blowout from start to finish. Now, even though the Saints scored touchdowns on their first 6 possessions, say that again, they scored touchdowns on their first 6 possessions, which is pretty incredible. I think you do have to look at this thing a little bit deeper in that you go back, it was 21-6 in the second quarter here. Dak makes a phenomenal tight window throw to CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee takes it the distance. And all of a sudden, it's 21-13 here in the second quarter. That is very much a ball game here. Now, the Saints then go on an 11-play, 70-yard touchdown drive to make it a 28-13 game. And this is where things start to get off the rails. Cowboys go on another drive of their own. They're approaching midfield here, and they got a chance to get it back to a 1-score game. And you got a wide open slant route that's going to go. Like, Dak sees it. He fires it in. It's a good throw. Jalen Brooks is running that route, and he trips. He falls, and it is an easy interception for the defender. And at that point, the wheels start coming off the bus, because then the Saints score off that interception for their 5th straight touchdown. And then the Cowboys do march down. They get a field goal for the end of the half, but it's 35-13. Right at that point, you're like, holy smokes, we're about to make this, look like we're about to make this a 1-score game again. All of a sudden, things start snowballing. Look, and I think for the Cowboys, they'll go back, offensively, and they'll look at their first 2 drives. They had 13 and 14 play drives. on their first two, and they only come away with 6 points on those drives. They get down to the 34 and down to the 20. Obviously, can't have that. They had 0 third down conversions in the red zone. They ran 9 plays in the red zone, got 0 touchdowns, and threw an interception. So just not great overall for the Cowboys here. Defensively, they succumbed, DJ, to what Alvin Kamara started to like. I mean, it's like we got Christmas Day, 4 years ago, Alvin Kamara against, by the way, a Mike Zimmer coach defense, if you might recall.
Okay, so that's a good pull because that explains the nightmares at the bottom of the screen. What I would say this, having studied Clint Kubiak's offense last week for the notebook, I knew that he was really in his bag when it came to pre-snap motions, shifts, play passes, misdirection, and deception. And I'm going to say this, like Derek Carr looks very comfortable running that type of offense. But it's not just Derek Carr. I think it's Alvin Kamara being the chess piece. I go back to years ago at the Combine where we watched after those running backs work out. It was Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. And I felt like they put on one of the best exhibitions of route running that I've ever seen from wide receivers. And it was them going tit for tat when it came to running routes. And for all of the love that Christian McCaffrey would get being that chess piece that you can move around the board like the queen, Alvin Kamara has the same kind of potential and capability. And what we're seeing the Saints utilize all of the skills that he brings to the table. This is a fun offense to watch, and I never imagined going into this year that this was going to be a must-see TV offense based on what Clint Kubiak is doing with Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr, and all of the bells and whistles with this offense.
Yeah, it was fun watching their offensive tape. It was physical. It was well coordinated. It was well designed. It was well executed. And next year, when I release my first top 50, you guys, I need as friends and accountability partners to you guys to say, okay, now close your computer, DJ, and put it away and unplug your phone, because I love Talisi Fuaga. Loved him. And I think I moved him down maybe a couple spots, not far. He was still way high up my list. But I think he was my top offensive, or no, he was right behind Alt. I think I had him right behind Alt on my first list in terms of offensive lineman. He's been awesome, man. He has been awesome. And it's like, okay, well, this test or this drill, who cares? His tape was so good. He was so physical. He's been excellent along that offensive line. One interesting note, Doug Farrar had a tweet, and I just pulled it up because it brought up a great point. We always talk about guys having to switch positions in the NFL and offensive linemen, that can be difficult. But when you look at Joe Alt, who's swapped from left to right, Dominique Pooney, who's gone from tackle to guard, Fuaga, who's gone from the right to the left, Cooper Beebe's gone from tackle to back inside. These guys are playing the best of these rookie linemen, and they're playing a position they didn't play last year. So let's keep an open mind when we're evaluating players, that versatility. Guys can do different things. They don't need to be typecast, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's
by the way,
funny.
how many 44-point performances have you seen where the quarterback only completes 11 passes? That's efficient. That's pretty amazing.
Efficiency
right?
and
Pretty
explosive.
efficient.
Buck, as a play caller on the high school level, efficiency and explosiveness is a good combination.
It is a good combination, and that's the thing that's really interesting about the Saints. We won't necessarily call them San Francisco in terms of like how they deploy their personnel, but man, when you think about this offense and you think about the number of play callers that have utilized a version of the Kubiak, Shanahan, whatever system that you want to talk about, it creates a lot of stress and a lot of headaches for defensive coordinators trying to figure out how to handle all of the things that they do. And with the Saints, because they have, like everyone talks about the quarterback being central to the offensive success, I believe it's that offensive weapon that Alvin Kamara is, that really puts you in the bind, because his ability to run it, catch it, line up anywhere, and do a bunch of different things really creates opportunities for the others. Hats off to Clint Kubiak. This is fun. I can't wait to continue to see how he builds and expands on what they've already shown the football world thus far.
Also, hat tip to Jeff Ireland, who's been, the personnel architect in New Orleans for a long time, who's done an excellent job of identifying and drafting players. Doesn't put his name out there. Isn't somebody that needs all the love. He's been a general manager before. He just is really good at scouting players and adding talent. And the Saints team that I don't know that we thought about, much less talked about all offseason, is off to a 2-0 start. All right, it's time for Cruising to Victory presented by Royal Caribbean. And the team that cruised to a victory is the Minnesota Vikings in a big time game for them. Second year in a row, they beat the 49ers, which, by the way, I did predict that one. So of all the games that I got wrong, and every fan base who gives me crap, hey, Viking fans, who's got your back here? You know what I mean? They match up well. It's a former coach. When you look at someone and Kevin O'Connell who's got a very good understanding and familiarity with the way Kyle Shanahan coaches and teaches and schemes it up. He's got some recent success here. But the biggest story for me in this ball game was Sam. You know, you look at Sam Darnold, 268 yards, including this 97-yard bomb to Justin Jefferson that was right on the money. He's doing what we thought he would do, Buck. We knew he had all that ability. Needed the opportunity. I'm in here in Carolina, and I'm sitting here thinking they had Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield in the building. It wasn't working out for them there. They both move on. They've both been successful in more stable organizations that lead you to believe that maybe the quarterback wasn't the issue when it comes to the struggles of the Carolina Panthers. But going back through this game, Sam, I just feel like I'd be repeating all the stuff that I liked about him coming out. I would just say the only difference maybe is if he has a negative play, I think he doesn't let it snowball. Maybe like he did at times with the Jets early on in his career. He's able to flush it, get to the next play, but quick release, quick eyes. He can use his legs when he needs to. I mean, his skill set's never been a question. And now it looks like you're marrying that with the right scheme, the right personnel, the right play caller.
It's really interesting to see Sam Darnold's reemergence as a player that people like, particularly in the football world, because there were so many high grades on him in the 2018 class, third overall pick. And what it does is it goes to show you the importance of the pieces around the quarterback. It's not only the play caller, Kevin O'Connell, who's outstanding when it comes to quarterback play, but it's the weapons. It's having a Justin Jefferson on the outside. It's having some of the other pieces like the running game, Ty Chandler and Aaron Jones being able to kind of combine for well over 100 yards. It's being able to give confidence to the quarterback because hey, man, you don't have to do everything. Your job is just to be the distributor. And maybe for the first time in Sam Darnold's playing career, he has been given those luxuries while being the starting quarterback. It does say a lot when you go back and you look at the situations that he was previously in, particularly in Carolina, where so much of the blame was placed on him. Then it was kind of placed on Baker not being good enough. Maybe we're seeing coaching matters. The support staff matters. Quarterbacks need a lot of things to play really well at the high level. Sam Darnold's a kind of like an example of how if you get the right things around the quarterback and you have the right play caller whispering sweet nothings, guy can play at a high level.
Play caller playmakers, right? I mean, we talked about that. How about, Justin Jefferson, taking that 97-yard touchdown connection. A lot of it was a deep throw, certainly from Darnold, but still the catch and run there from Jefferson was pretty impressive. I did want to look at things on the offensive side of the ball for the San Francisco 49ers. Look, they put up, they were production-wise fine, 407 total yards, but just 33 of those 400 plus yards coming on third down. Just a single rushing yard of those 33 coming on third. They were 2 of 10 on third down in this game. Converted one in the first quarter, not another one until the fourth quarter. And I think a lot of that, basically, you got to give some credit to what Brian Flores is doing with that defense. Mixed up some really good coverage looks. They had some man looks there that were, the 49ers targets weren't able to generate separation. Also some well-timed zone packages that helped take away the middle of the field that forced Brock to hold the ball a little bit. Wanted those in breakers, wanted that bender route a couple of times, just couldn't get it. And then the pass rush eventually gets to him here. So, I mean, I think when you look then at that defense in the framework of what, Kwesi has done from an evaluation standpoint and a front office standpoint, let's look at how they built this thing. They had some pieces, certainly, but how about the free agent acquisitions this year? Jonathan Grenard, big time. Andrew Van Ginkel, underrated, big time free agent acquisition for him. Brian Cashman, Blake Cashman out there has done a nice job. Gilmore coming in late to play a bunch of snaps for him at corner, doing a really good job. And then Dallas Turner, who they take in the first round, not just him, Ivan Pace last year. And how about Pat Jones, the second from Pitt? It was a third round pick. And he is coming on and really flashing and becoming a major contributor on this defense. Really solid in the run game, stood up George Kittle a couple of times in this game. He was in the backfield, closed down a run from the backside. He had 2 of their 5 sacks. DJ, I mean, like, I feel like he was a name we didn't talk about a ton. What did you have in your report on Pat Jones?
Yeah, I just pulled up my notes on him. So, interesting player, Patrick Jones, come out of Pitt. He was 6'0", 4'2", so 6'4", 261 pounds. He ran 4.94 at his pro day. So, not a great time in terms of the workout. I had him as my 146th player. I dropped him after that workout, which is a great lesson to learn there because he was a 90th pick and he's been excellent. So here are the notes. They love him at the school. He's a head to the chest power player. Like he just would bury his head into dudes and walk them straight back. Needed a little bit of a runway, not a loose, bendy athlete at the top, but played with maniacal effort with his hair on fire. They move him up and down the line of scrimmage. Had a great was down there at the Senior Bowl. Had a great 10 time. So again, that's a lesson, right? I teach it every year. I preach it every year at the combine. Throw out the 40 with these pass rushers. It's just the 10 that matters. But Buck, I feel like when you go back and look at that card, as we like to call it, on the board, and you just see that 4.94, and I'm sitting here looking at all these other pass rushers, all these explosive numbers, and I'm sitting here going, well, maybe I pull back a little bit on the grade. That's a good reminder. That's a lesson learned there, not to do that in the future because he's playing really well.
Yeah, playing really well, and it is something we talk about lessons to be learned and how you can get better. But DJ, I feel like we've said it multiple times, Red too. We've said it multiple times throughout this thing. Sometimes it's just trusting the tape. It's trusting the tape, trusting what your eyes see, but then also hoping that the player goes to the right spot. He's in the right environment to fully flourish. And this league is it's everything that we talk about. Like it's fun to watch the competitive games. It's intriguing to watch the young players if they land in the right spot. And it's also about the reclamation projects, the guys that it doesn't work out initially, but then it works out later because they find the right spot. Just so many lessons to be learned each and every weekend.
All right, let's get to the next game here. Rhett, Tampa, Detroit. What was your takeaway there?
I went in. I was like, all right, let me see what's going on. This, the Baker Mayfield phenomenon, right? The resurgence in Tampa, deserves a good hard look. And I just kind of felt like they held on offense. I mean, it was nothing spectacular, certainly, and they just kind of held it, kind of held tough. I think credit to the Bucs defense for sure. But they made some plays. Certainly, you've seen this one here to Godwin, and Baker's been really good. His running the way he ran the football in this game was big. This design QB draw for Baker Mayfield. Didn't know that Liam Cohen had that one in the playbook, but it obviously worked out for him there. I think this ultimately just comes down to, the Lions made some serious mistakes in this game. Looking at that interception right there, that felt like it was probably a little PI at the top of the break. Jameson Williams gets kind of bumped off his route. I'd like to see him be a little bit more competitive at the top there with the ball in the air, but that was an interception. And then the second one for Goff was just a killer. It was got some interior pressure and just kind of throws it up for grabs. Nobody home except for 3 Buccaneers defenders there. I think, again, this will come down to, and Dan Campbell comes out after the game and says, this game is 100% on me. Head coach cost our team this game because of the miscommunication that happened at the end of the first half, Bucky. And with your head coaching perspective here, you can kind of give us a sense of what's going through the mind of a head coach, right? So they get the ball. They have no time. They've used their last time out. They're down in the red zone. Goff completes a pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got 17 seconds left. The clock is running. Tick, 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 tick. And it's like, okay, you got the field goal team coming in from the sideline, but Goff is thinking he's trying to get up there and spike it. But you got, and so he spikes it. Field goal team's trying to get off. They don't get off in time. You got too many men on the field. So what's going on in the headsets there at that point?
Yeah, no, it obviously sounds like it's one of those things where if the head coach is indecisive, it's not communicated quickly to the special teams coach and to the offense coordinator. What are the next steps? What's the plan of action? And you would like to think it's something that's been rehearsed. You know what the magic number is in terms of how many seconds we need to be able to either run the field goal team on the field or what is the plan. And so I appreciate Dan Campbell owning it because some of those times as a head coach, you have a lot that you're thinking about. And sometimes those scenarios, that situation may have been one that you just forgot to either talk about, rehearse, or go through with the players. It's an expensive learning lesson, but it's one that I can guarantee you going forward, you will never have that same kind of mistake at the end of a half.
That's right.
No, I just love the fact there was ownership there. I mean, real quick, listen to what he said after the game because this is what ownership looks like.
I asked for improvement from last week, was the story. And we did improve. We did improve. And their coach cost them. Their head coach cost them this one. So, critical error into half. And 100% on me. We improved. There's areas we got to continue to improve on, but it's not okay.
There you go. That's accountability. That's why Dan Campbell's beloved by his players, because he owned it when it was on him. Last thought on this one is Chris Godwin from Tampa. Rhett talked about nothing really jumping out to me. I just feel like he's just one of those underappreciated players. Maybe it's just being in the shadow of Mike Evans. But you watch him, all the guy does, he can play inside, he can play outside, he's strong, he's physical, he's good after the catch, he's competitive in the run game. Like, just a really, really solid player that is one of those shadow guys. I just feel like he hasn't necessarily got his due. But I remember when Tom Brady first got to Tampa, of all the different players they had on that particular team, Chris Godwin was the one that he would often mention as someone who was just a pro's pro and someone that he felt comfortable with. So just want to give Chris Godwin his flowers. All right, guys, this probably was the game most anticipated, maybe the most intriguing matchup, and it played out that way. Cincinnati Bengals, once again, they start 0-2. They had every right and opportunity to win this ball game, but just did not make the one play that needed to be made. It was we'll start there, Buck. I guess I can go with you first. It is pass interference. People lose their minds about it. Chiefs have won back-to-back Super Bowls, 3 out of 4. I get all that. But that was a legit penalty. This was a game the Bengals had to win, had it right in front of them, just didn't finish.
Yeah, you got to finish the game. And, I mean, the odds, when you turn the ball over 3 times, it's really hard to win in this league. And this was a game that was right there. It was set up on a platter for the Bengals to take advantage of it, and they didn't. And it's one of those things that we'll look back at the end of the year, whether they get into postseason or not, or if they what seed they earned, they're going to regret giving this one away. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, I just liken it to Andy Reid and the Chiefs have mastered the art of winning. There is something about when you win games and you're used to winning, it just continues to kind of build that confidence or that know-how to get it done. And that's what I see when I look at the Kansas City Chiefs. No matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, they have enough in that bank, that mental bank of how to win games, that they get it done. And it's going to be hard to knock them out because the 2-time champs just continue to find ways to win games.
I think I look at a cause and effect in this one, DJ Bucky. I get your thoughts on this, guys. I think we started to see the armor come off of the rookie left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, in this game.
They got benched.
Yeah, got benched late in the game. Wanye Morris had to come in, and Morris, I mean, almost helped them lose the game. Negated a 21-yard catch by Rashee Rice with a illegal hands to the face. A little ticky tacky, but can't put yourself in a position like that late in the game when you're trying to go down there and win it. And eventually, they did get bailed out by the PI on the Bengals side of things that allowed for the Butker game winner. But Trey Hendrickson, 32% pressure rate this week, highest in the league. And he leads the league through 2 weeks. So it's not just Kingsley. That's a dang good player out there on that edge but he had his way with Kingsley Suamataia in this game. Had 2 sacks coming off that edge and, obviously forced the lineup change there. But here's the thing, like the cause and effect part, right? Either Andy Reid and company saw something in this Bengals defense that they wanted to run the football, or they did not want to subject Kingsley to any further issues with Trey Hendrickson and subject Patrick Mahomes to any further hits, because they ran the ball very well in this game, all the way up until the point where Isaiah Pacheco left the game with what is now known as a fractured ankle, going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. He had 19 carries in this game for 90 yards. Carson Steele had 7 carries in this game and was getting some big carries late in the game to try to ice this thing. So, I think that part of it, DJ, probably goes hand in hand with how we saw the Chiefs operate, because anytime you're seeing, Travis Kelce get 3 targets in the game and only 1 catch, that they were doing some things on the ground or trying to minimize some things through the air.
Yeah, I'm not in the camp that's surprised that Kingsley Suamataia is having difficulties. I thought he was a project. That's why I was a little bit surprised he went as high as he did. He was my 121st player. He was my 14th tackle in the draft. Now he looks great on paper with 6'0", 4'5", 326. He's got 34 and change arms. He ran a 5'0", 440. He is, he's very quick-footed. Going through my notes, he's thick, he's proportioned, he's got quicks going to the second level. He's pretty good in space. He just ducks his head a lot at the point of attack, and his hands are very poor. Like there was a lot of work that needed to be done with his hands. So they're going to try and work on that. They're going to try and fix that the best they can. But I thought it was pretty. It showed you how important that game was to them, that they hooked him, as someone who they had put their trust in, right out the chute, that they weren't going to watch that horror show anymore with the struggles he was having against Trey Hendrickson. So interesting from that standpoint. On the other side, Cincinnati, Buck, I believe they're 1-9 in their first 2 games of the season since Joe Burrow's been there. Like they just have this way of just kind of starting out slow before they find their footing, and they'll get it going. But they're not whole right now, roster wise. They're not totally healthy offensively. Chase is, golly, he's very frustrated. That was a costly penalty in that game. He's got to get his emotions under check a little bit. But Josivash having a good game for them. I guess I say this because I've seen it in the past. I don't really worry about them. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be okay. That's the defending champ. They didn't play their best and should have won the game.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, you talk about the slow starts and how 1-9 in the Joe Burrow era, and we always talk about an 0-2 start being a death sentence. But when you really think about it, I mean, you have 17 games. There's plenty of opportunity for the schedule to kind of come back to you, where you have an opportunity to close ground and do those things. I do wonder when you're Zach Taylor and the approach that they have taken throughout the preseason, where they don't really play their guys. They're not really physical. And we have talked about the Kansas City Chiefs, who jump out on people because they do play their guys. You would like to start out faster, but you do know it's a marathon, not a sprint. It just kind of cuts some of the cushion that the Bengals have in terms of having a couple hiccups later in the year. They're going to have to be playing their best once we get into the months of November, December, to be able to kind of secure a playoff berth and to be one of the teams that we thought it would be, which would be a top team.
Yeah, it's a team that when you get over to the Kansas City side of things is going to be without Isaiah Pacheco. I believe it was 6 to 8 weeks coming off of surgery coming out of that game. So going to be a little more steel action there for the Kansas City Chiefs. Rhett, let's get to the next one here. Yeah. Maybe one of the big surprises of the day. Vegas going on the road. They lose to Jim Harbaugh, and they go on the road and they beat John Harbaugh, which puts the Ravens at 0-2 for the first time since 2015.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the guy that you're going to talk about here in a minute, Brock Bowers, had a big say in the Raiders' comeback effort there in the fourth quarter in this game. It had 4 straight scoring drives to end the game. That's winning football right there for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now for the Ravens, I kind of looked at that side. What are we seeing with this, Baltimore offense? What are we seeing with? This is, I think, what they want to look like. I mean, had 27 attempts on the ground, went for 5 yards a carry. I mean, Lamar was, I think, 5 carries, 45 yards. Is about right what you want to see from him. And I think ultimately this comes down to an interception, a turnover that, Rashad Bateman probably should have caught for the Ravens. Tough catch, but it goes right into the arms of Robert Spillane. And so they turn it over that way. They made some, they had a real hard time converting third downs in the fourth quarter and extending drives and staying on the field to try to put this game out of reach. And so I went back and looked at what happened on the early downs to force those third down situations. And they had some critical errors on 2 drives that ended in 3 and outs. They had a second down where it's essentially like a read option with Lamar. He pulls it. He's about to take it. And Mark Andrews has a one-on-one block with what looks like a corner and just kind of whiffs it. Or there was maybe some miscommunication about what was happening. And that corner just has an easy layup to bring Lamar down right there. And so they're in a third down situation they don't get. Next one, right guard completely misses Crosby on a stunt, and Crosby just smashes Lamar for his second sack of the game. You just kind of can't have those on those early second downs, on those critical drives in the fourth quarter where you're trying to run the ball out, and they didn't convert on third, and thus giving the Raiders an opportunity to go find Brock Bowers there, DJ.
Yeah, Bowers was awesome. This second week in a row. And Buck, I don't think that it was an exaggeration when I said it at the time. I thought he'd be their best offensive weapon this year. You're seeing it through a couple games. His speed, his ability to line up all over the field. They've run a nice little 7-man protection, getting just a couple guys out in the route. So they give Minshew time. They're able to get kind of that little wind back, going backside off of a boot. They've hit that 2 weeks in a row, hit it against the Chargers, hit it against the Ravens. They're getting Brock Bowers the ball in space. And for a team that doesn't have a ton, he's already proving himself to be a good selection there for Tom Telesco with his first pick as the Raiders GM.
Yeah, he has proven to be a really good pick, and you can't go wrong with those offensive weapons. When you talk about a guy like Brock Burrows who can do so many different things, and the tight end position is one that is really tricky to scout and evaluate. But the things that we have found is those guys who are hybrids on the perimeter who can do a lot, line up outside, line up inside, play the traditional wide or the flex while also taking the ball on handoffs. You can have a lot of success and a lot of fun with those. And so I am not surprised to see the Raiders have success with him kind of as the focal point of the passing game. I'm looking forward to seeing them expand their multi-tight end packages and do some fun stuff to really make the tight end the primary option in their passing game.
That's a big win. That's a big win for the Raiders going on the road and knocking off the Ravens. Buck, you were there for the clash of the Clemson quarterbacks. You had Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson. Look, this is a game that I think you can make a case both teams feel like you got to have this one. Your Jags don't come away with it. Trevor Lawrence 0-7 his last 7 starts. You see that little nug on the screen there. What? Let's start first of all there. What the heck is wrong with your Jags?
DJ, I would equate it to a baseball player, a hitter being in a bad slump, where you are out at your last 22 at bats. But we know in life there's no such thing as momentum in terms of every individual at bat is a different experience. And so every game for the Jags is a different experience, but there feels like this heavy uh, thing hanging over top of them because of the way they finished last season and the way that they lost in week 1. And so when you're on the sideline, you see a team that doesn't have that same confidence and swagger that you would think early in the year. Because most teams, look, their teams that start 0-1, but then week 2, you bounce right back. But it seemed like there was more weighing them down than just an 0-1 start where you kind of fell apart in the fourth quarter. This is a team that really needs their stars to play like stars. And Trevor Lawrence obviously is the biggest star. I will say Trevor Lawrence evolution and maturation as a leader came out. I saw him verbally chastise his teammates and encourage them, hey, man, we got to get the communication right because there's so many pre-snap penalties and little things that should be cleaned up by now. Trevor Lawrence spoke out about that. And as he continues to kind of grow into his role as the leader of the team, he has to check people like that. They're struggling right now offensively, defensively. They're playing pretty well. But right now, Trevor Lawrence and this offense, they got to get going. And he needs his best players, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, to help him. Because I will say this, when you see the catch of Brian Thomas Jr. that he made on Denzel Ward down the field, DJ, the replay doesn't give it justice because you watched it field level. When you're looking at wide receivers, you always are trying to look at how they accelerate when the ball is in the air. This gear that BTJ has is remarkable. He has the potential to be really special in this league. He has just scratched the surface on how good he can be as a wide receiver 1.
I kept watching that one. In fact, Bucky, I was like, that the adjustment to that ball, just the way that thing. I mean, that thing was humming, and that was really impressive. You know what? I think a lot of times when we see games like this, the team puts up 13 points, like, no explosive plays. They're just dinking and dunking all over the place. They had 5 explosive plays that accounted for 172 yards of their passing offense in this game. And so you take those out, and outside of those plays, DJ, Trevor Lawrence is 9 of 26 for about 40 yards. So it's like the opposite, right? Like they couldn't figure out maybe the layups is kind of what it felt like in this one. So, I mean, like, yeah, they had the big plays, but they got to make the routine ones too.
No doubt. And quickly on Deshaun, much better game for him. Buck and I were talking before we got started here today about looked like he found a little bit of the swagger that had been missing. So that's interesting to see. Also, mechanical stuff that I had mentioned last week about sinking a little too much, sinking into throws and not being up a little more upright, not getting so low and crouched and kind of losing his balance, so to speak. That was a little bit better this week as well. So good for the Cleveland Browns, a good win for them over the Jags. Last game here, Buck, Washington and the New York Giants. The Giants stumble. Jaden Daniels gets his first win. A very quick, efficient game from him. Going through that tape, a chance to see him just get the ball out of his hands, get it where it needs to go, let guys run after the catch. I thought Cliff Kingsbury, someone who does understand the quick game, the screen game, think about his background and where he came from with Mike Leach, did a nice job of that. And I also thought, he took sacks, but sometimes I feel like sacks we view as negatives, and obviously as a veteran you throw the ball away, but I'll take sacks over forcing the ball into harm's way. He avoided that.
He did avoid that. And the other thing that I like about Jaden Daniels, I like the way they utilized his running ability. We saw in the clip, just kind of the way they were able to pull it and have a little escort coming around the corner and doing some of those things. I also like the poise and him getting his first game, game-winning victory or whatever you want to call it. But they need to score touchdowns. They can't keep settling for field goals. But to be able to win a game against a division rival as a young quarterback in your second start, you have to like that. Dan Quinn certainly has plenty to build upon, but he has to like how his young quarterback is progressing.
I just got one thing on this one, and it was the quote from Dan Quinn. After what this team's been through, I'm not bitching about making field goals, and they made 7 of them in this game, and so I would agree. You're going to get your first win of the season. I'd kick 17 field goals if that's what it took, and so credit to Austin Seibert for making 7 field goals. That is incredible. And obviously you'd like to turn some of those into touchdowns, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I will add this to finish it up with the Giants. Make sure that I get the number right here because I was going through the tape. It jumped out to me. I mentioned the Panthers and the bewilderment of having traded up to get Xavier Legette and then not throwing him one target in that game. Hey, the Giants know they've got one in Malik Neighbors, and they're not afraid to wear him out. 18 targets. 18. 10 for $127. And the speed is real. The shallow crossers, getting in and out of breaks. He is dynamic. He is going to be fun. So for a team that desperately needed a guy like this, he's just what the doctor ordered and didn't result in the win, but I applaud them for feeding him the rock, something that some of these other teams got to figure out. You got your best players, your best athletes, get them the ball. Give him a chance. And that's what Brian Daboll did with Malik Neighbors. All right, that was a jam-packed show. Went through a zillion games. It was a fun weekend, week 2. Looking forward to the rest of the week. We got some great guests coming up on the show. I will leave those for you to figure out, but it's college football related. You're going to enjoy it. Fun week here at Move to 6. We'll see you next time.